Hello, everybody. We're going to get started in about 3 to 5 minutes. We're just trying to get folks to come down here into the theater. Thank you. All right. Hello and welcome, everybody. My name is Caitlin Calendonk, and I'm the Director of External Relations for the VIU Students Union. Before we begin tonight, we would like to acknowledge with respect and gratitude that we are on the traditional territory of the Nanaimo First Nation. We recognize their enduring connection to this land, waters, and community and honor the rich cultural heritage that continues to shape our community. We are committed to walking the path of reconciliation and learning from the teachings of the Nanaimo people. Tonight, we are thrilled to co-host this All Candidates Forum as part of the Students Union Generation Vote Now campaign, which is dedicated to fostering civic engagement and promoting political dialogue among students and the broader community. This forum is an essential aspect of our efforts to empower students and ensure that their voices are heard in the political process. We would like to extend our gratitude to the VIU Political Studies Department and the VIU Political Students Association for joining us in the lobby this evening, and to the Political Studies and Global Studies professor, Dr. Mark Williams, and Student Union Chairperson, Sarah May Liana, for support and collaboration in co-moderating tonight's event. Tonight, we will begin to address with a keynote from Dr. Michael Mackenzie Jaroslawski, Chair in Political Trust and Leadership, and VIU Professor of the Political Studies Department. We are honored to have Dr. Mackenzie with us to provide insights that will set the stage for the discussions to follow. We would like to remind you that each of us is responsible for managing our own behavior. As facilitators, we're here to host this event and provide guidelines for respectful participation. If a disruption does occur, we understand that no one should be expected to endure it. Therefore, in the event of a sustained disruption, we will cancel the event. Please follow our community guidelines. Thank you for your cooperation and for being a part of this vital civic event. We are thrilled to get started with this informative and engaging evening. Thank you for your cooperation and for being a part of this vital civic duty. We are thrilled. Please give a warm welcome to VIU Political Studies and Global Studies Professor, Dr. Mark Williams, and Students Union Chairperson, Sarah May Liana.
Thank you very much, Kate. I'm Dr. Mark Williams.
I'm Sarah May.
And we are here to be your moderators for this evening, and we're going to start things off by introducing our candidates. We're going to start off with the candidates from Nanaimo-Gabriola and then move to the Nanaimo-Lanztville candidates.
Please welcome your candidates from the Nanaimo-Gabriola riding. Green candidate Shirley Lambrecht. All of them together. NDP candidate Sheila Malcolmson and Conservative candidate Dale Parker. And also your
And please welcome our candidates from the Nanaimo-Lanztville riding. Green candidate Leah Versaville, NDP candidate George Anderson, and Conservative candidate Gwen O'Mahony. We're waiting for George. Okay, George will be here soon. Winston Churchill said, "We make a living from what we get. We make a life from what we give." The candidates here and candidates all across British Columbia are looking to serve one of the highest honors of civic life in representing citizens here in British Columbia. It is our duty as citizens to get the measure of them. Nearly 500,000 eligible voters across British Columbia are between the ages of 18 and 34. It is a passionate demographic, also one whose future in the province is probably uncertain for many. They are not voters to take for granted, nor are they voters to disregard. The candidates here do not all share the same views on government or society, and we are better for that. Joseph Joubert, a French essayist, wrote, "It is better to debate a question and not settle it than to settle a question and not debate it." A successful strategist of campaigns said that a key ingredient for winning elections is to allow the campaign to provide an MRI of the soul of the candidate. While maybe that's going a little bit too far, there is a certain truth to this. To be yourself, to connect with the audience, to say what you think, and to build trust. Trust in your platform, and trust in your character. On October 19th, history is going to tap on the shoulder two of the candidates here on this stage. It is up for us to discern who is deserving of history's tap.
It is our pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Michael K. McKenzie, the Jerry Slovsky Chair in Trust and Political Leadership. Dr. McKenzie has dedicated his career to exploring the intersections of trust, political integrity, and leadership, and he brings a wealth of knowledge and insight into these crucial topics. In his role as Jerry Slovsky Chair, he leads efforts to understand and foster trust within our political systems, work that couldn't be more timely or relevant in today's world. Dr. McKenzie's research has made significant contributions to our understanding of how political leaders can cultivate trust, and he's deeply committed to empowering future leaders with the tools and values necessary to build trustworthy and effective governance. Today, he will share his insights and explore how we can all contribute to building a political culture grounded in trust and integrity. Please join us in welcoming Dr. Michael K. McKenzie.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here, and thank you for all the candidates for coming and for the Vancouver Island Students Union for helping to organize this event. So I'm going to make some brief observations about political trust to get us going. Is there a crisis of trust in our political systems? Do we need more political trust? The answer is complicated. The answer is yes and no simultaneously. Well, you might ask, how can that be? We need trust because trust is how we do things together. Politics is about collective action. It's about acting collectively to do things together even when we disagree. But if we're going to do anything together, we will have to trust others to do things for us. And trust helps make disagreement more palatable and also more acceptable. When I trust that someone's acting in my interests, it's easier to accept specific decisions that I might disagree with. In politics, we have to rely on others to do some or much of the work for us. That's why we have representative systems. We elect representatives to make decisions for us. There are too many political decisions for everybody to be involved in even a small fraction of them. So in a democracy, we need a lot of trust. We need a lot of trust because we entrust political representatives to make important decisions for us. But we also need a healthy dose of skepticism. We need what I call trust agnosticism. We need to trust when we have good reasons to do so, but not otherwise. And we should distrust when we have good reasons to do so, but not otherwise. So democracy is built on this precarious balance between warranted trust and warranted skepticism or distrust, with something like trust agnosticism in between. If we are too trusting, governments might act against our interests, and we might not even notice that they're doing so if we're too trusting. If we're not trusting enough, we will not be able to do things together as a society. So I want to ask the candidates here this evening, do we have the right balance of trust and distrust in our democratic system right now? And if not, how will you ensure that people can trust you if you're elected? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Michael Mackenzie, what you've shared with us about trust in political leadership is so very important for us all to think about as we hear from candidates tonight and head to the polls next week.
We are now moving into the moderated portion of this evening, starting with opening statements from the candidates. We're going to begin with the Nanaimo-Gabriola candidates, starting with the Green Party's candidate, Shirley Lambrecht. Shirley, you have 2 minutes for your opening remarks.
This is a little different format than I'm used to, but that's okay. I'm very pleased to be here today. Thank you for coming out and hearing what we all have to say. And I agree that trust is very important in leadership. And we have entered some very interesting times in politics. And if you're following what's been happening, we've seen a lot of change, a lot of movement. It seems like we have shifting sands in terms of the political spectrum, where parties are positioning themselves, and some of the decisions that are changing. Things are changing very quickly. I guess what I'd like to impress upon you, how important it is. You're in a sacred space in my world, a higher place of learning. And what has carried me through life is my critical thinking, my creativity, and my sense of humor. With any of those things, if you're missing any one of those things, life can be very hard. It's very important that we actually listen to what's being said, what people are saying, but also observing their behavior. So people can say all kinds of things, but it's very important to watch what they do. If they make a promise, that they keep it. And if they don't keep it, there better be a very good reason why, and they explain why. We see a lot of inconsistency, and that's concerning to me. If we say something, if we make a campaign promise, we keep it. And like I said, if there's a reason why we can't keep it, we have the responsibility to explain why. So when you're looking at the information that's being put out in the media and whatnot, fact check. Go and do the homework, because even when you look at reports that are being published, look who's funding those reports. Check your information, check your facts, check your sources.
Thank you, candidate.
2 minutes?
Next, we have the candidate for the NDP, Sheila Malcolmson, for the Nanaimo-Gabriola riding.
Hi, I'm I'm Sheila Malcolmson. I'm really honored to be on Nanaimo territory and really grateful to be at this event organized by the Student Union. We have learned so much. I've been honored to learn from what arises right from the student body, and I want to let you know just two of the ways that work of the VIU Student Union has had a direct impact on government policy, on the BC NDP policy, and on people in British Columbia. One, students here challenged the administration to implement a tuition waiver for people that had lived experience in the foster care system. When the BC NDP got elected in 2017, John Horgan came here and announced that this was a policy going province-wide that we fund, and that's changed thousands of lives. Another one I think of was after a really tragic and high-profile suicide here on campus. It was again the Student Union that advocated and had direct impact on the policy that, or the program that we put in place, 24/7 mental health support called Here to Talk. Yeah, Here to Talk. Which again has affected thousands of lives across the province. So know that your voice is really important and it's having lived impact on people all over. We've been trying to do the same kind of work, our NDP government, right here in Nanaimo, in the same kind of way, impacts that people can feel directly. We have opened and funded thousands of affordable housing units, affordable childcare spaces, addiction treatment beds that you can access with your care card, and new seats in K-12 schools. Also invested $700 million in the Nanaimo Hospital, and now we're going to build a patient tower on top of that. All this, though, is at risk from another way of thinking. And what might that mean, the conservative view and impact, particularly on the student body?
Thank you, candidate.
Thank you.
And next, we have the Nanaimo-Gabriola candidate of the Conservative Party, Dale Parker.
Good evening. Good late afternoon, everyone. My name is Dale Parker. I'm your BC Conservative candidate, and I'm very pleased to be here today. Thank you for having us and taking the time to come and listen to us. A little bit about me. I'm the proud father of two wonderful sons, Dylan and Cole. I share my family time with my friends and partner Christine and my two sons and my family, my mother and father, and I have two brothers and a sister. We grew up on Vancouver Island. I spent a lot of time at our family property in Mudge and Gabriola Island, where we held our family reunions, and of course lots of time with Nanaimo. I have over 30 years of experience in the IT and business fields. I worked as a consultant, manager, senior technical advisor across both the public and private sectors. My education changed my life, and I'm grateful for it. So way to go to all of you for taking this important time in your life to pursue higher education. After completing my degree in computer science when I finished high school, I furthered my own education in 2020 by obtaining a business administration diploma from the University of Victoria, and recently I graduated with a Master's of Business Administration at the Royal Roads University with a graduate certificate in management consulting. I have done extensive volunteer work over the years and throughout my life. The Conservative Party is founded on and will be guided by the following principles: good government, individual liberty and freedom, social responsibility, and a free enterprise economy. This election is about the record of the NDP and how their failed policies and irresponsible government have harmed everyone in the province. At the same time, they lie to you, confuse you, and give you intentional misinformation.
Thank you, candidate.
We now call upon the Nanaimo-Lanztville candidate from the Green Party, Leah Versaville.
Thank you to the organizers, and thank you to Nanaimo Nation for hosting us all on these unceded territories. My name is Leah Versaville. I won't bore you with a lot of details about me. I know that you're all students and believe in empirical research, and my website is just my name, leahversabel.com. You can check me out that way. I do work here at VIU. I have been on contract for the past 10 years, working in exams and invigilation, and also with disability services, both here and at the Cowichan campus. Learning for me is a lifelong journey. Neither of my parents went beyond grade 6 as children because war broke out in Holland and in the UK. Once they had come to Canada, each at the age of 20, they were able to further their education, my mom into nursing, and my dad telecommunications. They inspired me to read, question everything, and never stop learning. I hope students, but everyone listening, that you will never stop learning. You will never stop exploring, questioning, dreaming big dreams, and holding out hope for humanity and the planet. The Greens support education at all ages and stages of life, in academics, trades, and in every aspect of our social fiber. An intelligent, curious, science-informed population will take us all into the future, together, with respect and inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate. We now call upon the candidate from the BC-NDP party, George Henderson.
Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. Thank you to the organizers, and also thank you so much to my fellow candidates and all of the parties that chose to be here today. You know, I was born and raised in Nanaimo. I went to Park Avenue Elementary School, John Barsby Secondary, and I also went to VIU here in Nanaimo. And so what I want to tell all of you is thank you very much for taking the stairs to get here, because it's quite the walk. But that being said, this election is pretty pivotal, especially for young people. Many generations chose not to invest in young people. They didn't invest in healthcare. They didn't invest in education. And this is an opportunity for you to be able to have a say in what your future looks like. When I was valedictorian at John Barsby Secondary and here at VIU, I said we don't inherit the earth from our parents, but we borrow it from our grandchildren. And that's the type of perspective that we need to be taking with everything that we do. And that's why I'm very excited and proud to stand behind David Eby, because he's trying to do something, whether it's been from investing in doctors. We've hired 800 family doctors this year. We've built a new intensive care unit. For young people, there are significant advancements in, even here at VIU, with 266 new beds for affordable housing. That's taking action for people. Also, the fact is this government is focused on evidence, evidence-based decision-making, whereas another party is saying that climate change doesn't exist. So that's the decision that you have ahead of you. And I'm looking forward to this discussion and for you all being here to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate. Now we welcome the Nanaimo-Lanztville Conservative candidate, Grandma O'Mahony.
Oh, I gotta tell you, being on this campus is like coming home for me. A number of years ago, I returned to the island after I'd raised my two girls, and I really wanted to get back to school and finish a master's degree. It had been a goal, and I had set it aside while I was raising two young girls, my nieces. And I came here to Vancouver Island University, and I'm gonna say, it was a blast. I did my Master's of Business Administration, and at that point in time, we could do an international administration program as well. And it wasn't just about the studies and about the opportunities and interacting with the wonderful faculty, but you will make lifelong friends when you engage in a program. And I have to say, this university is one of these places where it's just kind of unique. I still have friends within the MBA program. Trust is earned. It's not given out freely. That's why these events are so important, and I'm glad you came out. Because studies show that actually we make a decision based on what we hear, the body language. So the interaction like this is so important for you to make that determination. People can promise all kinds of things. People can even talk about a revisionist history of what happened in this province. But until you actually hear it from us and look at us in our eyes and see how we deliver, that's what makes the difference. Many of you know I used to be an NDP MLA. I was elected in the Fraser Valley. I'm originally an Islander. I raised 2 girls. The NDP have been in power for 7 years, and I see that we have a crisis in healthcare, a crisis in mental health and addictions treatment, crisis of safety in our communities. It needs to change. So that meant that I had to take a nice straight look at the party that I had been involved in for so many years and realize
Thank you, candidate.
that I need to be part of the change. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. This concludes our opening round. Each of the candidates was provided with 5 questions that came in from the student community here at Vancouver Island University, and candidates have 90 seconds to respond to the 5 different questions. We will start with the first one. Food security is a significant issue linked to the rising cost of living, affecting many, including students and young adults. Despite having enough food in our community, high prices make nutritious, healthy options inaccessible. At VIU, students are relying on temporary solutions like on-campus meal vouchers, grocery gift cards through accessibility services, and the Good Food Box program by Nanaimo Food Share.
The question is, what is your long-term plan to ensure that students and young adults have consistent access to affordable, nutritious food while they pursue their education? And the response order will go, we're calling Nanaimo-Lanztville Green candidate Leah Vesable.
Thank you. As a lifelong learner, I practiced getting this down to 90 seconds. All institutions, including universities, must have on-site food production, which includes green roofs, community gardens and orchards, and hydroponic food production such as tower gardens, which can be grown in residences and throughout the campus. These growing systems must include students who will not only participate in food production, but get credit for the hours they contribute. Additionally, communal spaces for preparing, preserving, and storing food must be incorporated into universities. Community kitchens can teach students valuable skills in preparing nutritious salads, soups, stews, and expand everyone's access to a wide variety of culturally inclusive foods and dishes. Local restaurants and food producers can be invited to participate in teaching, preparing, and preserving foods. Purchasing fast food is not only expensive, but questionable in nutritional value. Students do not have the resources to be traveling great distances or storing large quantities of food, which may be less expensive than buying 1 or 2 items they can bring back to campus on the bus or on a bike. University partnerships with organizations such as Loaves and Fishes, Wisteria, the Stone Soup, Selby Street Mission, CALSA Aid, and the Hope Center.
Thank you, candidate.
Thank you.
We now call upon NDP candidate George Anderson, please. George Anderson.
So I can tell you as a former student here at VIU, I remember those days of eating lots and lots of ramen, and it wasn't fun, and it's definitely not nutritious in any type of way. But one thing that I can say is that this NDP government has been focused on ensuring that there is food security for people. And that's through the $7 million investment in Loaves and Fishes. But apart from that, we've made sure that we've cut ICBC premiums by $500, that we've made sure to cut BC Hydro rates as well, that we've continued to make sure that transit-oriented hubs exist so that you can walk to and from your grocery store and get the type of services that you need. Because Right now, we're going through an affordability crisis. When I was on council from 2011, city council from 2011 to 2014, by the end of my term, the average house price was $310,000. And now we're looking at prices that are around $875,000. So this government has been laser focused on ensuring that you have more money in your pocket. One of the things that we're talking about for the future is ensuring that there's a $1,000 tax cut that will go to 90% of individuals. And so that's going to be able to put more money in your pocket so that you can make sure that you're spending money on nutritious food. In addition, we've also worked with our local farmers markets as well to ensure that people can get locally grown and sustainable food. That's called looking towards the future. That's called
Thank you, candidate.
Climate change, and that's called taking action for the future.
And now, the Conservative Party candidate Gwen O'Mahony.
We learned a lot about food security hello? We learned a lot about food security during the pandemic when there were supply chain disruptions. Some of you may have remembered what that meant. We had shortages of food. And that has really raised a key issue that is so important, and it's an important plank in the BC Conservative platform, and that is the need to increase local food production, particularly in BC. BC is ranked the lowest across Canada in terms of support from the government and initiatives. And I've met with farmers from BCAC and other farmers locally, and they say we can do more. We can certainly do more. We need a couple things though. We need support, we need you to cut the red tape. So that's why in our platform, we want to double food production in British Columbia. Here on the island, we only produce 3%. 3%. Think about that for a minute. Locally grown food is nutritious, and it's good. And you know what? It decreases waste and carbon footprint. We need to double our production. Thanks.
Next, we will hear from the Green Party candidate from Nanaimo-Gabriola, Shirley Lambert.
Thank you. I'm just going to pull this down a little bit. There we go. Okay. So definitely accessibility to food with students is definitely an affordability issue. And we need to make sure that students have everything that they need to thrive when they're studying. I've worked with vulnerable youth who from kindergarten up to high school who actually didn't eat their first meal or any meals. They come to our program after school and they hadn't eaten yet that day. Well, you can imagine how well you learn when you're hungry. It is very important that we have access to healthy, nutritious food, definitely. And it's not going to be any one program, but we need to be very creative of the types of programs we create. In terms of, there's all kinds of things that we can be doing to fund food so that people who are struggling to make their bills can actually get a regular supply of food. Even we have cafeteria services here. So there's funding models that we can create. That's just one option where we can actually fund food, where people have access to food on a daily basis. Yes, it's important. We have all kinds of capacity to grow food here, and Gwen is correct, we're only producing 3% of our food on the island. And we actually have small farms all around us. And if you look at what's going on—
Thank you, candidate. Next is the BC NDP candidate, Sheila Malcolmson for Nanaimo-Gabriola.
Thank you for the question. Absolutely an impact, both especially for students where you are isolated from where you can ordinarily buy food. So I echo the comments about both having funded and expanded public transit, and then also directly supporting the organizations that are doing really amazing food rescue. Loaves and Fishes, in addition to the $7 million warehouse investment that we made, that George mentioned, also through my Ministry of Social Development and Poverty Reduction, we sent $50 million in direct support to food security, food serving organizations across the whole province, just really recognizing with the hugely increased cost of groceries. I wish we could control, we can't ourselves, but to be able to recognize the increased food pressure and demand. Loaves and Fishes works so well in partnership that I really see the value, and I know that this work is happening, the student movement working with Loaves and Fishes to be able to get that excess food that shipping companies donate. But another really important piece is just simply getting more money in people's pockets. Having removed interest on student loans, that's a $230 savings a year for average student. We've already done. Returning the grants, student grants, which the BC Liberals, John Rustad government had canceled, that's $3,500 a year, maximum that people are getting. The student loan payments, when we took interest off student loans, that's a 50% savings for a lot of students. So in addition to other affordability, we're trying to focus on students directly to put more money in
Thank
their
you,
pocket.
candidate. Next is the Conservative candidate for Nanaimo-Gabriola, Dale Parker.
So John Rustad didn't cancel anything. He's a member of the Conservative Party now. He used to be in the Liberal Party, but he didn't cancel anything. The NDP's policy now is going to give you $1,000, so basically they're going to throw you a carrot, a couple bags of groceries, and somehow that's going to alleviate the fact that nobody has any food, nobody has any money to buy food. The Conservative Party is going to cancel the carbon tax, which has driven up the price of groceries and everything else. We're also going to get BC growing. We're going to be investing in our farmers, expanding access to local markets, and cutting the necessary red tape that holds them back. We're also going to unlock our agricultural potential, support our farmers, and ensure British Columbians have access to affordable, locally produced food. We're supporting farmers. Our Grown in BC plan promises robust financial and structural support to help farmers thrive and meet the demands of the growing population. We're investing in agricultural research, providing financial support for yield-increasing measures, increasing access to advanced agricultural technologies, helping farmers recover from extreme weather events, and enhancing pollinator populations. We're going to be expanding infrastructure and market access, increasing food processing capacity, and finally, we're going to be improving rural transportation infrastructure and opening new international markets for BC agri-food products. Thank you very much.
Thank you, candidates. We are now moving to our second question. The current provincial government has developed a limited number of beds to address the housing crisis in British Columbia. With the ongoing cost of living crisis, students are spending a significant portion of their part-time or full-time incomes on rent, and many are facing homelessness. Most students are just one incident away from being unable to make rent.
So the question is, how does your party plan to increase affordable housing options for students near campuses to improve their overall experience and stability? First, we'll hear from Nanaimo-Gabriola NDP candidate Sheila Malcolmson.
Thank you for the question. This is the biggest impact on affordability and the program that we've been working the hardest on the last 7 years. Insufficient housing built under the previous government. 130 student housing units were built by the BC Liberals, John Rustad's party, in 16 years. We've already built in 7 years 6,400, and 266 of those are underway right here now. It's overdue, but it is going to make an impact. Also got across the continuum of the 1,000 affordable housing units we've already opened in Nanaimo, something for people that have been formerly homeless, something for seniors, really trying to across the whole continuum. In some cases, super low rent. In other cases, 30% of income. We're also looking ahead to be able to have young people that haven't yet been able to buy into the market, looking ahead to when you are a homeowner, to have introduced during this election a 60-40 split, where you have to finance 60% of the cost of the home that you buy, and the BC government would fund the other 40%, would carry that, and it really keeps a kind of a public ownership component as well. But we need to throw everything at this, and already us having forbidden corporate vacation rentals, for example, have opened up more rental units just right in Nanaimo. So the fact that our rents in BC have dropped 2% while the rest of the country has gone up 4%,
Thank you, candidate.
tells us we're making some headway. We have more to do.
We'll now hear from the Nanaimo-Gabriola Conservative candidate, Dale Parker.
The BC Conservative Party has announced a Get BC building plan which promises to end the housing shortage, streamline the approval processes, and deliver the largest tax cut in housing in BC's history. This is dubbed the Rustad rebate. We will approve home in months, not years. Rezoning and development permits will be approved within 6 months and building permits within 3 months. If cities fail to issue permits with these timelines, the provincial government will step in and issue them. Through proactive planning and through trusting our professionals, we're going to build houses very quickly. In 2021, then David Eby, then Minister of Housing, announced a $2 billion NDP housing platform, the Housing Hub, in which he promised and quoted that he was going to, our government is investing in more affordable housing for people who work and live in Vancouver and throughout BC. When it was announced 3 years ago, today we find out the houses rent for $4,200 a month or $4,300 a month. He purposely lied to you, and when they were caught and asked to explain these numbers, Housing Minister Kalin said, the Housing Hub program is a supply place program. It is not an affordability program, directly refuting what David Eby told you in 2021. This government has a very poor track record of building affordable housing, and they're not going to succeed by building communist-style housing in British Columbia because it'll drive the costs up for everyone.
I will now hear from the Green candidate, Shirley Lambert.
So with our BC Greens platform, we've put forth that we are going to build, we're committing to building 26,000 units of housing per year of below market or non-market social housing and co-op housing. We've committed to that. The other thing that will answer some questions, some of our future questions down the road, is we've already committed to spending $1.1 billion investing in education in our first year. Second year, slightly over $1.1 billion. And in our third year, over $1.2 billion we're investing in education. And that includes all aspects of education. And housing is part of that. So we are investing in people, and we're ensuring that people have the shelter that they need.
Thank you, candidate.
Next, we will hear from the NDP candidate for the Nanaimo-Lanztville riding, George Anderson.
Unfortunately, this is a bit short for me, so my apologies for taking it off the stand. But again, housing is a big challenge for young people right now. As I mentioned earlier, housing prices have gone up significantly, and this government is focused on making sure that there is housing available to you. And I can speak to it directly. I was at the announcement right behind the cafeteria area and the library where we announced 266 beds. There's 10,000 across British Columbia that are underway right now. That's, again, is an NDP government that's focused on taking action immediately. Whereas under John Rustad and their government, it's actually kind of laughable, the fact that between 2001 to 2016, They built 135 beds for affordable housing for students alone, which is a very small number. So again, another thing that that government also focused on, and John Ristad was part of that government, was that in 2012, they cut affordable housing by 75%. This government has a plan to build 300,000 new homes over the next 10 years, whereas the BC Conservatives, they're talking about cutting $4.1 billion from healthcare. So how can you trust them to actually follow through when they're talking about making cuts across the board within our affordable housing, within healthcare, and many other areas? So that's what this government's focused on, taking action for everyday British Columbians, not standing up for people like Chip Wilson out in Vancouver who lives in an $80 million mansion wanting tax cuts through the speculation tax.
Thank you, candidate. Next, the Conservative candidate for Nanaimo-Lanztville, Gwen O'Mahony.
I went to school during the time that John Rustad was a cabinet minister. And do you know what my rent was back then? $500. And it was for a 2-bedroom basement suite, which I shared with a roommate. So that meant I paid $250. So what has the rent turned into in the last 7 years under NDP reign? It's ballooned out of control. It's astronomical. The Toronto Dominion Bank did a poll of students and found that 45% of students can't cover the basics for food and housing. I put a post on Instagram and asked people what percentage of income that they were directing towards housing. 35% of respondents said it was 60%. Do you know what affordability is actually ranked at for what you should be spending on housing? 30%. So I want to just tag on to what my colleague said. There's one really important piece that we are going to introduce when we form government. That's a red tape minister. Somebody tasked with cutting red tape and getting things done. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate. Next will be the Green Party candidate for Nanaimo-Lanztville, Leah Versaville.
Universities must realize the need for densification of housing on and near campuses. Architects and engineers refer to the highest and best use of structures as a guiding principle. The existing single or 2-story structures are just insufficient with increasing demand in the housing market. Land must be dedicated for housing units immediately on campus, and a suite of other possibilities must be given consideration. Continuing the use of single-purpose buildings must also be examined carefully. Both on campus and in adjacent buildings, schools sit empty overnight. Facilities sit empty on weekends when they could be used to part-time to house people. There are also months over the summer, winter, and spring breaks when schools, both private and public, sit empty. No student should be forced to couch surf, live in shelters, in the woods, or in a car while attending university, and yet this is the reality for many. If universities want to continue enrollment, housing must be part of the package. Not-for-profit housing is key to making this work. Universities must extend invitations to chambers of commerce, local private builders, and corporations to create a cooperative student housing infrastructure.
Thank you, candidates.
Vancouver Island University, like many others, is experiencing a budget deficit, and the recent IRCC announcement limiting international student visas will increase financial pressures due to our reliance on international student tuition to fund our institution.
What commitments will your party make to ensure that public, post-secondary institutions in BC receive sufficient funding to provide high-quality education and services, reducing their financial dependence on international student tuition? We are going to start with the Conservative Party candidate for Nanaimo-Lanztville, Gwen O'Mahony.
Thank you. First off, I want to say that international students are a valued part of the student body. And the program that I was in had a large number of international students, and that just made it even a better learning experience for me personally. So just want to say that to start off. I was a governor on the board of governors for the University of the Fraser Valley, so I have some understanding of what that funding crunch looks like in the background. And I know that there were targets that were meant to be filled by international students, and even then, there was discussion, like how is this going to be possible? I have to say, I don't agree with a top-down approach. I agree with a consultative approach. And the reason why this is important is many of you who would be in administration, you know that we have a health crisis, so we need to train more healthcare workers, but you also know that in a university, the most expensive program is healthcare. So I'm going to say innovation and collaboration is really key. We need to sit down and we need to make this work.
Thank you, candidates. Next is the Green Party candidate for Nanaimo-Lanztville, Leah Versival.
We need to reimagine education from the ground up. In Nevada, where I did the research for my master's thesis when I was going to rural roads, public schools incorporate a K through 16 perspective, which means that students never see public education as ending with a high school diploma, but continuing for years afterwards into trades, apprenticeships, academics, and beyond. This model allows for the resources and infrastructure that used to be only devoted to K through 12 to be extended with full public support for education beyond high school. Education is a lifelong journey, and where students qualify, they can begin to incorporate college credits into their educational journey, into apprenticeships and academics, work-study programs, and can access mentorships and private scholarships. Mentorships can be organized through alumni associations, private corporate entities, government, crown corporations, and service clubs, such as Lions, Rotary, Kiwanis, Eagles, and many more. Alumni can benefit through ongoing relationships with students and in the form of charitable receipts for financial contributions, as can corporations. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate. And next, we'll have the NDP candidate for Nanaimo-Lanztville, George Anderson.
Thank you for the question. Education is very, very important. I attended this university. I also attended Osgoode Hall Law School in Toronto, and quality education is what helps us improve our economy and also helps create just a sense of community where we actually have larger discussions, such as what we're doing here today. But what I can tell you is I was a high school student when John Rostad and the BC Liberals were in government, and they cut healthcare, they cut education, and even recently when John Rostad was asked, how would you fix the fact that students are in portables? His response was, we just moved them from portables into classrooms. They expanded classroom sizes. So to focus on what this NDP government's been focused on is making sure that operating grants have increased for universities. That means that you actually have the services available to you here at the university rather than seeing diminished services. So again, that's the difference, and that's what's at risk with this election. A government that's focused on making sure that there are services available for you and I versus the BC Conservatives who are standing up for 2% tax cuts for people like Chip Wilson in Vancouver and his $80 million mansion. So that's how we're going to get to making sure that universities are more stable, is by ensuring that we continue to increase funding towards universities and their operating grants. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate.
We'll next hear from the Nanaimo-Gabriola candidate from the Conservative Party, Dale Parker.
The BC Conservative Party is going to be strongly supporting post-secondary institutions. We're going to help to find out what their needs and challenges are. As you know, universities profit with nonprofit organizations in the community, and governments play a big role in supporting those nonprofit organizations through funding, support, and other measures. I'm very excited to announce a recent policy in education that just came out. We've announced an Igniting BC's Tech Future program for British Columbia. We've seen our technology sector struggle under the NDP government. Igniting BC's Tech Future, which focuses on creating the right conditions to attract and retain talent, boost local innovation, and make BC the top destination for tech professionals, entrepreneurs, and investors. We need to partner with the private sector, and we need to get investment in British Columbia in our post-secondary institutions. Creating an environment where people are partnering together is going to create more funding for the universities. Our program focuses on innovation, investment, and creating conditions for our tech sector to thrive. We will remove the carbon tax, driving up the price of everything, including post-education tuitions and every other cost. Thank you.
We'll next hear from the Nanaimo-Gabriola candidate from the Green Party, Shirley Lambert.
So, as I alluded to earlier, we are, as Greens, are committed to making a significant investment in education. Education has suffered from austerity budgets for the last 4 decades that I'm aware of. I went to school in British Columbia as well. All my public schooling I did in the interior BC in Nelson. And teachers have struggled just to deliver their lessons. They're digging into their own pockets to fund buying resources for their classrooms. And that's why we're making a commitment. If you look in our policy and our platform, that's why we're making these large commitments to education. $1.1 billion, 1.2, then the following year, just about 1.2, and then over 1.2 in our 3rd year, because we need to recover from these austerity budgets. Using international students as our business model to fund, maybe it was a necessary evil, but it wasn't the right approach. The right approach is for government to support education.
Thank you, candidate. We now call upon NDP candidate Sheila Malcolmson.
The stories that we've heard about how in some places international students have been treated and misled with really serious consequences are real and alarming. That's not what was happening here at VIU, but so I do understand that the status quo wasn't necessarily tenable, but that said, the federal government's action their cap was a really blunt instrument done without consultation, has had really serious impacts like are described in the question. So we as a BC NDP government will continue to work with post-secondary institutions to be able to respond to this really huge funding challenge to make sure that they're supported while they adjust to these changes. It's important to contrast what happened under the previous BC Liberal, Christy Clark, Gordon Campbell, John Rustad government. They ordered colleges and universities to cut $70 million from their budgets, whereas we, on the other hand, increased operating grants every year since 2017. They also, when they were in government, deregulated tuition fees, which caused them to skyrocket. So we really do need to watch that piece. At the same time, we've been investing directly on campus to have the new Health Sciences Center, to have upgraded the Trades Center, the Gathering Place, for us to have expanded it and just opened all the accessibility upgrades for people with disabilities to be able to move through the campus more easily. Those are all direct investments from our BC NDP government that have taken some of the financial pressure off VIU.
Thank you, candidate.
We'll do more.
Moving on to our next question, mental health is a growing concern for students across British Columbia, with many facing stress from academic pressures, financial burdens, and uncertainty about their future. International, Indigenous, and BIPOC students encounter unique challenges, and post-secondary institutions often struggle to meet the increasing demand for mental health services due to limited resources. For instance, VIU has 6 mental health counselors for over 8,000 students on the Nanaimo campus, resulting in long wait times and reliance on community services.
What steps will you take to improve access to timely, affordable, and culturally competent mental health services for all students in BC? We'll start with the Green Party candidate for Nanaimo-Gabriola, Shirley Lambrecht.
So our commitment as BC Greens is investing in mental health care. We're actually presenting that as part of our overall wellness, a holistic wellness policy and practice, where we're including mental health in with our physical health. You really can't separate the two. If you don't have mental health, your physical health is going to suffer. So we're actually putting mental health under that umbrella and funding it. As well, we're committed to adding counselors, not removing them from schools, because we know students are facing so much uncertainty, so much. We have an epidemic of depression, anxiety, and we know that we need to provide supports for students who are suffering. There's so much uncertainty that you all are facing, and we totally appreciate that. And that's why we're committing these dollars to make sure that we're bringing counselors back into the schools instead of cutting them from the schools.
Thank you, candidate. Next, we'll hear from the NDP candidate for Nanaimo-Gabriola, Sheila Malcolmson.
Thank you. We need and must invest early in young people. If you can get the skills and tackle mental health challenges when you're young, we really can set people up for a life of success. And the pressure that young people in particular have been under the past bunch of years has just shown how much more we need to do in our system. Addiction treatment was deregulated when the last time that there were conservatives in charge of government. That really caused a real setback. So do watch for that red tape reduction. It can really have unintended consequences. The kind of things that we've been building up to that end, addiction treatment beds, mental health counselors. We've now committed to have 1 in every school, but already, including in Nanaimo-Ladysmith, we have integrated child and youth teams where we've broken down the silos between the health authority, the school district, Ministry of Children and Family Development, and service providers, so that young people have a wrap-around support system. They don't need to retell their stories again and again. We've expanded the Foundry model to 23 physical centers, and 1 of them is coming to Nanaimo. That's for young people up to age 24. And right now you can get free same-day counseling at the Foundry virtual website. It really works well for people, and we hope that you'll reach out for help when you need it. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate. Next, we will hear from the Conservative candidate for Nanaimo-Gabriola, Dale Parker.
Sadly, after 7 years of the NDP government, we've seen the mental health crisis come before our eyes. 7 years of no support for mental health has had devastating impacts on our communities. We're seeing people with mental health problems thrown in the street, who turn to drugs, who are forced to deal with the police. The police take them to the hospitals. The hospitals then are unable to deal with them, and they can't help the patients coming in with bumps and bruises and other serious problems. These are all the downstream effects of the neglect of the mental health services in British Columbia. The BC Conservative Party is going to focus on recovery and treatment for people with mental health problems. We're going to have services designed to ensure all levels of treatment is needed and is available. Our Patient First plan is a universal health care plan. It includes mental health services. It establishes patients first wait time guarantees and improves access by providing publicly funded partnerships with non-governmental clinics. We will implement activity-based funding to ensure that the busiest hospitals have the money they need to operate and to provide these services to their patients. Our party is making 3 key promises: compassionate intervention legislation, building low secure units for by designing secure facilities.
Thank you, candidate.
Thank you.
We'll now be hearing from the Green Party candidate from Nanaimo-Lanztville, Leah Vezevel.
As your MLA for Nanaimo-Lanztville, I will bring my decades of experience in mental health programs and advocacy to the legislature. I have been affiliated for several years now with a nonprofit society whose objective is to train peer counselors under the mentorship of registered clinical counselors to increase access of youth, seniors, couples, or adult individuals to mental health services. This organization is called Cowichan Family Life. There's no reason that this model could not be incorporated and implemented into universities such as VIU. In that organization, access to counseling has been on a sliding scale basis so that those with limited resources can still get the mental health support that they need. Through grants, the support of individuals and corporations, the shortfall in income for the society was made up through the BC Lottery Corporation and other funders. Both the student needing support and the volunteer who is gaining practical experience and mentorship through the registered clinical counselor all benefit. Demand on other agencies is reduced as the peers are in-house. Also students who are bound by ethical standards and confidentiality agreements to safeguard the students needing support. Professors and support staff also need training in recognizing the stress indicators that may be putting students into crisis mode.
Thank you, candidate.
Thank you.
We'll now hear from the NDP candidate for Nanaimo-Lanztville, George Anderson.
Thank you very much. Going through university is a very difficult time. People are away from their homes. They're dealing with financial stressors. They're dealing with a lot all at once. And again, that is something that is challenging for every student who goes through university. And we're also dealing with an affordability crisis where, again, you have extra financial concerns that that are having to deal with. And so one of the things that this NDP government has done is work to create Here to Talk, which is a mental health service that's here directly for university students, so that 24/7 they have someone to be able to connect with respect to any of their mental health challenges. I do want to point out, since I have a bit of time, that my friends in the Conservative Party are talking about how they're going to do a lot and invest, but I want to bring you to a code word that they use: non-governmental organizations or resources. What they're talking about is privatizing healthcare, cutting $4.1 billion from healthcare, and we all know what happens when you privatize healthcare. Things become more expensive, and people like Chip Wilson will be able to get mental health services, but you won't be able to, and that's what they're focused on helping the wealthy people, not helping everyday British Columbians, and that's what this BC NDP government is focused on: helping everyday British Columbians and helping students like yourself so that you can make sure that you get the services that you need, like the urgent and primary care facility.
Thank you,
behind Country
candidate.
Club Mall.
We'll now call upon Conservative candidate for Nanaimo-Lanztville, Gwen O'Mahony.
Well, it's always wonderful hearing from Champagne socialists talking about affordability issues. I understand what it's like to be stretched. I never had resources going to university. In fact, I was the first of my kind. And here's the thing: we never had, in my time going to university, as much strain and mental health issues as I've heard from the student body in this current modern time. And the reason why is because all of these issues we have been discussing, they are adding to the mental health crisis. If you can't afford your rent, or if you have to live in a neighborhood where there's crime that's out of control and you don't feel safe because it's the only place you can afford, if you don't have a family doctor, All of these things are going to add to the stress that you're already experiencing in this, what's supposed to be actually one of the most wonderful times of your lives. And this happened all under the NDP watch. I get called all the time from healthcare professionals. I want to talk about this because that's important. Bill 36 is an overreach. Recruitment and retention is important. We need to be able to keep the people in the system that we currently have and recruit more people. But I would recommend you go online and Google Bill 36 and in complete government control over bodies, every healthcare professional. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate. Moving on to our final question. Between 2017 and 2023, 169 out of 384 Indigenous students at Vancouver Island University, funded through the LV program, paused their educational journeys. Recently, VIU has cut essential support and services for Indigenous students, which raises concerns about further interruptions in their academic progress.
What specific steps will your party take to enhance funding for Indigenous services and supports, such as scholarships and in-community learning hubs, to help more Indigenous students successfully complete their post-secondary education? We'll start off with the NDP candidate for Nanaimo-Lanztville, George Anderson.
We need to make sure that we're working with our Indigenous partners. The only way that we can be successful in British Columbia is if we actually work with our Indigenous partners. That's through creating partnerships in economics, in medicine, so that everyone feels comfortable within our communities. And so when it comes to what this government has done, I'm just going to echo some of what Sheila's mentioned already, is that here we have actually worked to ensure that students who are overrepresented in care in welfare care, sorry, my apologies, that are in care actually are able to go on to post-secondary education. And so what we've done is made sure that there was free tuition for Indigenous students. And that's something that we need to be doing more of to ensure that they can reach the same type of heights that everyone else is, because there are significant systemic issues within our communities. And I can speak to it specifically as a Black individual, that there are specific institutions throughout our communities that make it really difficult for people to get ahead. And this government's very focused on ensuring that Indigenous students can get further ahead. I'll speak to John Ristad and that government, and they actually, when you look at the Moose High campaign, Indigenous people have asked him to stop wearing that insignia because of the fact that he has demonstrated that he doesn't respect Indigenous people. So that's the difference, is an NDP government that's focused on people and Indigenous rights.
Thank you,
well.
candidate. Next, we will have the Conservative candidate for Nanaimo-Lanztville, Gwen O'Mahony.
I just want to shout out to these universities. Universities such as VIU were created and established to offer first-class education to rural and Indigenous communities. That's why we are here. And so we need that to continue. That is what is important. Previous, you would have to move far, far away. And this is the model to bring people, to allow people to stay in their communities or not have to travel as far. And it's successful. Indigenous communities need to have the ability to participate in our economy. That's really, really important. So you'll hear a lot of words and a lot of talk, but what we want is action. I'll give you one example. Haida Gwaii, they want to build a solar energy project. Just a small scale solar energy project. That's it. For some reason, it's taken the NDP government 4 years to figure this out. Now I want to talk about John Restad, because I know he comes up a lot. My colleague seems to really like him because he mentions John Restad more than he mentions his own leader, Edie. When John Restad was the Minister of Indigenous Affairs, he signed over 400 agreements with Indigenous communities, over 400, more than any other minister across Canada in history. Trust me, he's committed to reconciliation as I am. We all should participate in this economy. We are a rich province, rich in resources, both human and natural. There's no reason why we shouldn't be able to pay for everything. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate. Next is the Green Party candidate for Nanaimo-Lanztville, Leah Versaville.
First, I must express dismay that nearly half of the Indigenous students funded through ELEV have paused their educational journeys over the last 7 years. I had the incredible opportunity one academic year, 2018 to 19, to work at Tillicum-Lalem here in town as an adult basic education teacher with the primary objective of assisting mature students to qualify to enroll in many programs at VIU and other educational institutions. I taught English and math, and I can bear witness that every one of the students brought a wealth of lived experience and cultural knowledge to the class each day, stretching their capacities and capabilities at every turn. So many students had experienced racism, ableism, and outright neglect in their educational journeys to that point. It took incredible courage for them to come to school again and work through the colonial expectations that are still employed in post-secondary education. I learned far more than I taught. The most important thing I learned is that cultural and community support is critical to academic success in this context. The opportunity to practice cultural healing and empowerment, to hear from teachers whose academic experience had led them to PhDs and master's degree, to be brushed with cedar, fed healthy foods, and supported in technology and curriculum were essential to student growth and capacity.
Thank you, candidate.
We'll now move on to the Nanaimo-Gabriola candidates, starting with the NDP candidate Sheila Malcolmson.
I am really proud of the work that's happened here at VIU, and I am concerned that simply for our government, BC NDP government, to fund tuition waivers, to establish at UVic the first course in Indigenous law in the world, I think. It's not just a case of getting people here to the university, but supporting their success. And so I am concerned that in the absence of all the supports that have been present here, I think we do need to work with nations locally to see what kind of extra support that they would need. At the same time, we're really working to build up that support at home for nations. Right here in Nanaimo, to have done 2 major land back ceremonies and given hundreds of hectares of land, thousands of hectares of land actually, back to Nanaimo that originally belonged to them. All the work that's been happening with delegation of foster care back to nations locally and across BC. We're really in another chapter of a time where there is that strength at home that can also support the student. In other cases too, we've been funding training closer to home. This applies more to nations up north, but for students not to have to come all the way to BC to learn, to get a BA or to learn trades that they can teach, they can be taught closer to home, which means that they're more likely to stay in their home nation and then bring those skills back to the nation to be able to run the business of the nation. I've heard that that's a real pressure and an imperative for First Nations.
Thank you, candidate.
Thank you.
We'll now hear from the Nanaimo-Gabriola Conservative Party candidate Dale Parker.
Yeah, so one of the principles of the Conservative Party regards to economic, First Nations economic reconciliation comes from the work of Dr. Gosnell, who is a key figure in the fight for Indigenous rights in Canada and a passionate advocate for First Nations economic advancement. His leadership underscored the importance of economic empowerment for Indigenous communities. The Conservative Party of British Columbia is committed to realizing Dr. Gosnell's vision. We will deliver on his vision of economic and social progress, and this includes education. When communities have the capacity and empowerment to undertake economic development and equality in social situations, including education, they become less independent on us for handouts. And I'm very proud of the Conservative Party. We have 2 significant community leaders in the First Nations who are candidates in our party. And with their support in helping us understand and gain a deeper understanding of the needs, we will achieve great things together as partners. We will return forest and land back to the Indigenous people, and we will treat them as equals, and we will find reconciliation through agreement and through partnerships. Thank you very much.
Thank you, candidate. Thank you, candidate. We'll now hear from the Nanaimo-Gabriola candidate from the Green Party, Shirley Lambert.
So I guess my first question is, why are students pausing their educational journeys? And this is the thing, is we need to get those answers, and we need to reach out to these students. We need to go to root cause, and we need to understand what their challenges are and how we can help them resolve it. If there's any situations that are systemic issues, we need to resolve those issues. If it's in terms of support, in terms of mental health support or wellness support or financial support, we need to understand why students are choosing to leave their educational path. So it's, and to me, I look at this as an aspect of reconciliation. We need to be really working in partnership with our Indigenous communities and look to them for some of these answers. We are investing in education because we recognize the value of it. We recognize that every decision we make needs to be viewed through the lens as well as with the Indigenous communities, so that we're really understanding the nature of the problems and how we can address them. It's not just for us as settlers to figure out what the problems are. We need to be asking the questions, and we need to be sitting back and listening. That is our duty and our role in reconciliation.
Thank you to all the candidates. That concludes the Q&A portion of the event. We will now hear closing statements from each candidate, where they will each have 2 minutes to make closing remarks.
We are going to start off with the Conservative candidate for Nanaimo-Gabriola, Dale Parker.
Thank you very much. I found the opening statements around trust and creating trust to be incredibly important and invaluable for this election. If you go to the internet and have a look at the NDP's 2020 platform, you'll see that they promise faster care and reduced wait times. They promise more doctors. We still have 1 million people in British Columbia without a family doctor after all of these years. They promised a better life for seniors. Currently, they are devastated with punishing taxes and tax into poverty. Some of them I've talked to in the community are actually living in their cars. They promise more affordable housing, and as you know, housing costs are at record levels to the point where nobody can afford one. They promised childcare, and they didn't deliver on any of that. So when you are going to vote in this election, when we talk about that trust, when you see all the problems everywhere you go, when you see the people on the streets smoking crack, when you see children dying in homeless camps, when you go to the grocery store and you can't afford to buy groceries for your family, look at the platform of the NDP. Look at the last 7 years. They've created this environment. Ask yourself, in good conscience, can I vote for this party who has lied to me for 7 straight years? I think you all know what the answer is. Thank you very much.
Thank you, candidate. Next, we will hear from the Green Party candidate for Nanaimo-Gabriola, Shirley Lambrecht.
So again, I want to thank you, everyone, for coming out today. I really appreciate you taking an interest. These are very challenging times, and I think it's really important that we look at the issues, consider the candidates, look at all the candidates, and look at who speaks to you in terms of your values, who is going to represent you, and who's going to take the long view. That's one reason why I am very proud of our platform as well as our party, because Greens, not only do we address the critical need today, but we take the long view. We're concerned about you as you finish your education and you move out in the world, that there is a world for you to move out into. We're the only party that's taking a strong stance and is ready and poised to tackle the climate crisis that we're in. No other party is willing to step up and acknowledge that 40% of the climate change is caused by the fossil fuel industry. We're the only party that's going to stand up and change that trajectory. We need to stop investing in the fossil fuel industry. And I know we didn't talk about that today, but I do want to make that point. Your vote is your voice. Please use it. Listen to your heart. Don't listen to the fear-mongering that's being talked about in terms of strategic voting. Look at the policies, look at the platforms, which ones resonate with you. I'm very pleased to say that our platform is costed, so you know where the money's coming from. This election is about priorities. Our priorities are about people and planet. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. And next we will hear from the NDP candidate for Nanaimo-Gabriola, Sheila Malcolmson.
Thank you, friends, again, for being here, for being part of really a historic election because of the election reform that the NDP brought in 2017 in cooperation with the Green Party. This is the first time that there will be a scheduled election in October, arguably a much less disruptive time for young people to be voting. You have a solid address compared to the BC Liberals always had the election in May. And this is the first time I understand that VIU is going to have voting on campus. So well done to the student movement for asking for that. It's really important, right? So climate is on the ballot, affordability is on the ballot, and you have two very stark choices. Here's an example of the kind of approaches that we brought. The John Ristad, when he was in government, they canceled student grants. We brought them back up to $4,000 a year. They, under them, student loan interest was the highest in Canada. When we came into power, we eliminated interest on student loans. They put fees on adult basic education. The NDP made it free again. This is the kind of way we need to work. We need to invest in people. We need to keep in mind when, contrary to how my Conservative colleague just described things, Joe Gosnell's family has asked the Conservative Party not to quote him anymore. And the party, because of its reconciliation flip-flopping, has been condemned by the Union of BC Indian Chiefs and the BC Assembly of First Nations. We have to move forward with a constructive, cooperative, working together, investing in people, acting on climate. That's what I'll do with you and for you if you vote for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, candidates.
We'll now hear the closing statements from the Nanaimo-Lanztville candidate from Conservative Party, Gwen O'Mahony.
So there's three things that you need to consider when you're voting this election. You will vote based on policy, which you've heard today. Some of you are going to vote based on party. Some of you have your ideas about what party you want to vote for, and those feelings are often very personal. But you also vote for a person. You want to have a leader. And I want to tell you a story about what an MLA can really do for a community, because I was one. You can have an impact on people at the personal level and also at the government level. You do case files. Your words can make a difference in somebody's lives. It's a big job, okay? Everybody here knows a taste of it, running for office, and those who are elected knows what it's like. It's a big responsibility. I'll give you an example. When I was a critic of skills training, a woman came up to me, a young student, international student, and she said, people are stressed out because they don't understand colloquial English. Could we put together a program? Do you think if I put together a program, I could help the students? And I sat and listened to her. I was really busy. I had to catch a bus somewhere else. But I sat and listened to her for 5 minutes. And I said, hey, yeah, you know what? This sounds like a good idea. 6 months later, she had started an entire program to help students with their English skills. And she sent me an invitation to see her first graduating class at Kwantlen. And it really struck me how what words I spoke as a member of the Legislative Assembly had such an impact on the community. Vote wise. Vote for people who understand the sacred trust. Vote for people who have experience doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate. We'll now hear from the Nanaimo-Lanztville Green Party candidate, Leah Verzabel.
Thank you to the Student Union for the well-constructed questions, and thank you to everyone who has come to participate in today's forum. We also have to thank the people who have created an environment for all of us to learn in. And when we have representatives in our legislature, these people have been put there through a trust relationship with each of you. We know that this is an incredibly important role that we would like to play. We know that we have an obligation to each of you, whether or not you vote for us. We also have an obligation to future generations, not just your children, but generations far into the future. My concern today has been around education, but also about the platforms of some of the other parties. I believe that tinkering or changing any terms in the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People is wrong. We are going into treacherous grounds. We do not need to step back a generation or a century and consider living in a time when education was not considered to be essential. Thank you for your kind attention today. Please vote wisely. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate. We'll now hear from the Nanaimo-Lanztville NDP candidate, George Anderson.
Thank you all so much for being here today. You've heard it from everyone that this is a very important election. When I was a city councillor and regional district director, I passed a 40-year transportation master plan that looked towards the future. I passed electronic town hall to make sure that people who were underrepresented in the local government process had a voice. I stood up against waste to energy when they wanted to bring garbage from Vancouver and burn it here in Nanaimo. I was the one who put the motion on the floor to save rail on Vancouver Island. And that's the reason why I'm standing alongside this NDP government, because they're focused on taking action for people, everyday people. 800 new family doctors hired this year, a brand new medical school at in Surrey. Here in Nanaimo, we're seeing a new intensive care unit, a new urgent and primary care facility. This is real action for people. And I say 100% listen to my conservative colleagues. Trust them when they tell you that they're gonna cut 11%, they're gonna reduce healthcare spending to 11%, which is a $4.1 billion cut in healthcare. Trust them when their leader says, how did we convince carbon-based beings that carbon is the problem with climate change? The reason is because we listen to evidence, we listen to experts. That's how we need to be making decisions in government. So when you're going to make your decision and your vote, trust them when they talk about how COVID was caused by cell phone towers. These are not serious people, and that's what we need to be focused on, is making serious action for the people of British Columbia. So on October 19th, vote George Anderson in Nanaimo-Lanztville. Thank you.
Thank you to all the candidates.
Candidates, on behalf of Sarah May and myself and the Department of Political Studies and the Students Union, thank you for a truly edifying discussion and debate on a whole bunch of great ideas. Don't run away yet. We're going to have Kate back on to the podium, and we'll do a group photo too that Alex is going to take.
I want to thank everyone for attending tonight's event. Before I move into my closing remarks, I just want to say again, as all of our candidates tonight have shared, just how incredibly important it is for each and every one of us to not only get out and vote, but to encourage other people who aren't in this room, in our classes, on our campus, and in our community, just how important it is to get out and vote. We know that youth and young adults in the province of British Columbia, aged 18 to 35, make up the largest voting bloc in this province. So it is so incredibly important that we all perform our vital civic duty, we express our democratic freedom, and we get out and we vote. For the first time ever, we will have polls here on the VIU campus in Nanaimo. There will be advanced polling. Yes. Next Wednesday, October 16th from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. in the cafeteria. And there will be voting on Election Day, Saturday, October 9th, in the cafeteria here on campus, same time, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Please, if you'd have one takeaway from tonight, it's to get out and to vote. So now I just want to say thank you all for joining us this evening for what has been a fantastic opportunity to engage in political dialogue. Thank you to each and every one of our candidates for coming. Tonight would not have been the same without all of you. We are so grateful to our candidates for their participation and for sharing their ideas and their visions with us tonight. I'd like to extend a thank you to Dr. Michael K. McKenzie for his insightful keynote on trust in politics. I would like to share a big thank you to the Malaspina Theatre team and our moderators, Dr. Mark Williams and Sarah May Liana, for guiding tonight's forum with professionalism and ensuring that there is constructive, respectful exchange of ideas. Lastly, we thank you for attending tonight's event, and we hope to see you casting your vote here on campus next week to make sure that your voices are heard. As we bring this part of the forum to a close, the candidates will now have the opportunity to take a break before joining us in the lobby for a meet and greet portion of the event. This is your chance to ask questions one-on-one and continue the conversations in a more informal setting. We encourage you to take advantage of this opportunity to engage directly with the candidates and to mingle and talk about, everything that was said here tonight. For students who may need support in developing some of your questions, maybe you're nervous, please come and see our Generation Vote Now table in the lobby. We would love to support you so that you feel confident in talking with our candidates. And again, thank you to everyone who contributed to making this event a success. For all of you being an active part in tonight's event, we will see you in the lobby, and please get out to vote.